So good morning, everybody. My apologies, there was a technical hitch apparently for a number of people to come on, but I gather they are all on now. I'm Nick van Schoonding. I'm here with Remy Welschinger, our CFO, and in Zambia is our Chief Operating Officer, Vasily Corella. So I will really cover just at the outset where we are with Anglo, our drilling program, the Chieza East plant and our plans there, and our recent announcement on CASA. So in terms of Anglo, all I can say is that so far to date, the discussions have been extremely encouraging. We have set out, in some detail, obviously, what we ideally need from a transaction with Anglo. They forward, certain proposals. We've batted some of those back, and we've suggested, alternatives and certain priorities that we need. And they have taken those extremely seriously and are now going through those and will revert back to us in due course. I have been very impressed with obviously the professionalism that you would expect, and also the, shall we say, the very accommodating and encouraging environment that we have had as a group, two entities discussing, advised, of course, by NM Rothschild, who I have a long association with, and they've been very helpful there. I really am obviously somewhat restricted in terms of what I can say on these negotiations, but just reiterating, we are obviously pushing for a very attractive deal for our shareholders. As part of this, ahead of any potential commercial transaction, we are reorganizing our licenses, and I can't really say much more than that. This is all still work in progress, but it puts us in a very strong position ahead of any transaction that we will look at. This, of course, all takes place against the backdrop of a very supportive environment, particularly for the metals that are exposed to sustainable technology like copper. Many of you will have seen the recent very bullish report by Goldman Sachs and some of their projections over the next few years. I don't believe this is a sort of flash in a pan. I mean, we are looking at a sustainably stronger, higher copper price, through to 2015. Through to over the next 5 years, with forecasts, I think, in the recent Goldman Sachs report going as high as potentially $15,000. I'm not a big one in terms of forecasting any sort of prices. We take the price we get, but I do think we are seeing a really structural change here in the copper market. And you'll have seen President Biden's recent announcements, which have probably been lost, but in some of the sort of fixed recharging stations that they're going to roll out across the US over the next few years. I was amazed to read that each charging station actually requires 8 kilograms of copper. So, these are game-changing type situations as we look at the bigger picture for copper. And we are obviously in a fantastic position given the assets that we're sitting on. I might add lastly that against this backdrop, we have had yet another approach, and obviously we can't take that any further until we know where we are with Anglo, and we indeed hope we can do some sort of deal with Anglo. So watch this space. We will come back to you. On drilling, Vasily will take you through in detail. We're obviously keen to start drilling. There are still rains up in the Munilunga area. And in the meantime, we are about to start a magnetic survey, and that will cover our areas by an outfit based out of South Africa, and they've done a great job in the past, and they know Zambia well, and will do a great job for us this time, and that will start towards the end of this month, and we should have results which will inform us as well about our drilling strategy for this year over the next few weeks, probably early June or thereabouts, early to mid-June. Turning to the drilling itself, we have appointed a new driller. On a very cost-efficient basis, you'll be happy to know. So we're saving money there. We will expect to start that over the next few weeks, deploy 2 rigs. Initially, we will kick off at Fuji, then move on, I think, to Chiesa. Drilling about 8,000 meters and initially 18 holes. Now, the difference here, and Vasily will comment on this, but the difference here this time is that we are going for the more, shall we say, stratigraphic, deeper holes up to potentially 500 meters. Before we were drilling from surface down to maybe maximum 200 meters. So it is going to be deeper drilling and obviously trying to target the big sulfide deposits that we believe are trapped in some of these key areas, and that obviously is really what we're trying to do. So please don't expect updates every week like before. These are going to be longer dated drilling, but we are very active, and let's see where we get to with as we kick off. On the Chiesa East plant, thirdly, we've been working very hard here, and we've been making extremely good progress. So we've sent 40 kilos of samples from that Chiesa East areas to South Africa. They're now being assessed for met test work, and we expect those results back imminently, actually, over the next few days. And we have also appointed a consultancy to assist us with all this. Once we know the recoveries and feed this into our optimization model, we will have a small JORC resource there. And then, we anticipate finishing a scoping study by around mid-June. This would eventually move on to a feasibility study and then looking at potential funding, which we've already said that, we've had some initial interest there. And I think given, the higher copper price and the increased attractiveness of actually developing this small plant for us, we I think are in a good position there to look at some external financing, and Remy will touch on this in a minute. So that means if all things go well, and I say that with fingers crossed, but that we could therefore be in production by the sort of third quarter of next year, and certainly cash flow generation, if everything goes to plan, in the second half of next year. Now, the upward trajectory in the copper prices, as I've already said, is hugely encouraging, and this could have a very, very significant effect on our numbers here for this little plant. Remy, I might ask Remy just to comment, if you can, Remy, on what our internal modeling says at various copper scenarios, because I think it's pretty.
Thank you very much, and hi everyone. So on the economics of the plant, I've mentioned in a previous call that to start with, the capex is expected to be sub $10 million. I mean, our first desktop study was suggesting even sub $5 million, but we definitely want to give a bit more room to that forecast. So we're expecting the capex to remain sub $10 million. And what that means with the production profile of the plant is that you would basically, at current prices of about $10,000 a ton, you would generate about $55 million a year of revenues, of which about $35 million would be free cash flows to the shareholders. So that's very meaningful money relative to the size of the company. And if we use actually the Goldman Sachs price deck for copper prices over the next 2 or 3 years, you end up generating revenues between $65 and $75 million a year, for free cash flow around $45 million a year. So that's extremely significant. It's a big focus of ours, and that's why we're going through the motions through the study.
Thanks, Remy. That's all incredibly encouraging, and it could actually be a massive game changer for us. Over the next, well, certainly into next year, because a junior, spinning off that sort of cash is pretty attractive, shall we say. On Casa, lastly from my side, you will have seen the transaction that we've just announced. I am very pleased with this transaction because it provides more early upfront payments to us, and secondly, they are secured by some securities listed in the US and Canada. And I think importantly, Racla itself is backed by some very experienced um, operators who have done deals like these before and have operated in places like the DRC before successfully, I might add. And so we're very pleased that we have a good group here, backed by proper people who know what they're doing in that part of the world, which you really have to do. You really have to have that sort of operating experience to get involved in the Eastern DRC. So very happy with that, and very happy also with the, as I say, with the upfront milestone cash payments that will be heading our way. So in summary, I just couldn't be more pleased with where we are as a group. We are, well financed. We have significant cash resources. We have, I think, a great developing shareholder base with some institutions. We have I think we're in the midst of, incredibly encouraging discussions with a major, with others sort of lined up. Our drilling is about to start, and we've got a plant that looks more and more attractive by the day. That is just a great, fantastic position to be in. So I just couldn't be more pleased strategically and operationally where we are now. So I might now ask Vasily in Zambia. He's been out there for a few weeks and months and doing a great job for us on the ground, despite all the COVID restrictions. We've sent him out with his mask and his various anti-COVID measures. But Vasily, do you want to just give sort of a few minutes update to our investors on where we are with the drilling?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. So we've towards the end of last year, we obviously had all those samples that were analyzed by Anglo. And those samples, we've conducted an element ratioing exercise on that. And basically what we do there is we take a ratio of the mobile versus immobile elements, and I won't go into too much detail, but in effect, by ratioing copper and scandium, we're able to work up targets, and this process allows for discrimination of genuine copper sulfide anomalies. So on the basis of that exercise, we've identified 18 target areas or 18 locations. We are in the process now, as Nick said, to engage, or we've engaged a company to carry out a fixed wing airborne magnetic radiometric survey. This is actually although we've done the survey over the whole license area before, this particular survey has a closer line spacing. And the reason for doing that is that'll assist us in getting better resolution on ground, and that'll also assist us in finessing the final drill location. So we're looking at flying 5,200 line kilometers over the areas that have been identified by this element ratioing work and by the anomalies that have been generated by this exercise. And then that'll be followed up with, at the moment, 18 drill holes. Depths, we said, up to 500 meters, could be deeper. Some of these holes will end up being strat holes. So we get a better understanding of the underlying geology. And hopefully we intersect these deeper sulfide targets, which we believe these license areas hold. I think that's about it from my side, Nick.
All right, many thanks, Vasily. So there've been a lot of questions submitted to us. So I'm going to go through these and pick them off one by one. You'll appreciate, some of these are repetitive. So if your exact question wasn't asked, it's because it was asked in a slightly different format. So from Stephen, in terms of Rothschild, what is the fee structure? And is there an ongoing monthly retainer? There is no retainer. We have negotiated an excellent deal with Rothschild. There is no retainer, and it's all success based. So there will be a fee, but that's based on the success that we have with an outcome, whether it's Anglo or somebody else. So that's a very good deal for us. Normally, brokers, are much more greedy than that. So we've I think worked through a very good deal for us. Legal license holding issues. Please summarize these. Look, again, as I said at the outset, I really can't say much more than we are doing a bigger reorganization of the licenses. It's all gone incredibly well to date, and this is all ahead of any potential commercial transaction. So, but as soon as we can, we will update. But suffice to say, I'm extremely pleased with what we've done to date, and we've got a great outfit that's helping us on the ground in Zambia. Please, could you provide an update on any legal actions against ARC or its subsidiaries? So there are no legal actions against ARC itself. As we've reported before, there is an action that was launched in Zambia by a former local shareholder. It's a completely bogus claim. And our counsel in Zambia, and obviously here in the UK as well, believe it has absolutely no merit, as we do. And incidentally, it breaches all warranties anyway. So, I mean, they have no leg to stand on, and we will see them off aggressively. Then on comments around the chief over the weekend. Look, we've got and make it our business to have extremely good relationships with the local chiefdoms where we operate, as I think all mining companies in Zambia and other areas need to do. Corporate social responsibility is extremely high on our list, and I've had a lot of experience here in other jurisdictions, notably Indonesia and South Africa. And we are firm believers in supporting the community and doing our bit. And it's not just about handouts, by the way. It's not about giving the people the fish, it's about giving the people the fishing rods. And so we are coming up with quite innovative ways to really add value and support the community that we operate in. And we are in discussions with the chief and his various supporters and local headmen to see what further initiatives that we can look at, and that is sort of work in progress. So I'm very pleased with that, and I think he will be as well, because we as I say, we've got some really good projects that we are going to be working on, in terms of education, local clinics, and so on, and more. So that I'm very pleased with. Then the reason for the placing after the last investor call, when we stated we were fully funded. I'm going to ask Remy to address this issue. Operator, if you could unmute Remy.
Hi guys, yeah. So I'll cover the placing because I think there's been some confusion about it. So we've said before, back in January, February, that we were fully funded for the next 2 years, or definitely to the end of 2022. And that was the case. What's happened since is it's twofold. Is one, we have defined the drilling strategy for the year, and that it's basically involving deeper drilling to follow the targets that Basili wants to focus on. And that's basically a bigger budget for drilling than the regular budget we've had in the past. And so that's one reason for it, which we've explained in the RNS, but I'll also explain to you how I look at it. The second reason, obviously, is the acquisition of the Albis Crest in Botswana. And I'll cover that point as well. We've had question about why doing this acquisition when we are focusing on our asset in Zambia and the discussions with Anglo American. It's very simple. This is probably one of the most attractive transaction one can do in the Kalahari Copper Belt. And the opportunity, I've been following the Kalahari Copper Belt for a couple of years now, and I've been in discussion with Kopore, the seller, for a couple of years, and they are effectively divesting of some of their assets in Africa and focusing on Australia. And I think it would be a shame to miss this opportunity of acquiring what I believe is, and what Vasily believes is, the most attractive exploration ground in the KCB, right next door to the Zone 5 deposit, which is being developed as we speak and is about to enter maiden production by the end of this year. It's owned by Cupric Canyon. It's the Khoemacau mine. So it's just a very opportunistic move. It's the best piece of land in the KCB, and the acquisition price is very attractive. So it would have been a shame to pass just to avoid confusing the message. So if there's been a confusion, I apologize for it. But in terms of transaction, it adds a lot of value to ARC Mineral. So that's number one. And then in terms of the budget, so look, we were budgeted to the end of 2022, which is when we comfortably feel that the cash flow from Chirza East would take over going forward in terms of cash flow management for the company. If we increase the drilling budget for this year and potentially the following year, depending on what happens with Anglo and other majors, and we go ahead with the Botswana transaction and increase our expenses related to the activity there, we would basically run out of cash around the turn of the year or Q1 next year. And so we can take the view that let's not upset shareholders or create confusion and not raise money for it. Or we can take the view that for 2.5% dilution, we can basically raise the money to cover all this extra spending in the budget for the next 2 years and make sure that we'll never have to feel we need money at the wrong time. I don't know whether there'll be a wrong time, but my point is with the experience with COVID a year ago, I much rather be on the conservative side and make sure that I have a runway of fully funded budget ahead of me, and ideally 2 years rather than 1 year. So then depending on the situation over the next few months, I don't have to hope for a good time in the market for me to raise money. And so right now, we don't need to raise money all the way till production takes over in terms of cash flow in the second half of 2022. And I think that's a much better position to be in.
All right. Many thanks, Remy, for that. And, you know, suffice to say, we have got more than enough on our plate in Zambia, which is frankly where 99% of our efforts are focused and will be focused. But you know, this was an opportunity we thought was extremely interesting in Botswana. But that is it. We are not looking elsewhere as you would expect. So that I think answers any questions in terms of any potential future raises. We're now extremely well funded and even set to improve that with the cash that will come through from CASA as well. Two questions on exploration. I'm going to hand these over to Vasily. One is previously ARC has provided more regular updates on drilling and results. This appears to have slowed in the last year. Please provide information on that. I think I've partially addressed it, but I'll let Vasily also talk about what we're doing in terms of the sort of deeper drilling that we're doing, and what our thinking is around the sort of potential traps of fluids. Vasily, if you could cover that. And then secondly, there's a question about gold. Previously mentioned there's potential for gold within our licensed areas. I mean, this is true, and there have been some quite interesting gold discoveries. Look, I think we're sort of razor-like focused on copper, so we do not want to get distracted into other minerals. But obviously, if we stumble across a diamond mine or a gold mine, clearly that will be attractive, and we will look at that. But really, as I say, our effort is solely focused on our principal metal, which is copper. Vasily, do you want to just cover the deeper drilling and what exactly we're looking at there?
Okay. In terms of the drilling results, obviously with the seasonal weather that one has in subtropical Africa, there are parts which are challenging to drill, and our area is quite a high rainfall area. So, the drilling window, let's call it, opens up round about now. And, we've drilled in the past through to sort of middle of December. And that's, in effect, your drilling window. Theoretically, it is possible to drill through the rainy season, but, you have to spend the extra money on infrastructure and so forth to be able to, because you can drill. It's just accessing and servicing the drills and the drill sites becomes a challenge. And if you're in the middle of the forest, you can imagine it's quite a costly exercise. And so that's why most exploration companies, they use the seasonal window to carry out their exploration. In terms of the deeper drilling, the last 2 seasons of drilling, we've largely focused on the soil sampling that we did, and really just looking at the absolute values in the soil sample. So in other words, where we had high copper in the soils and generated the anomalies, and then we tested them. And what we've discovered to date is that, although those have delivered copper, and both at Calibre, Chiesa, at Fiji, we've had copper intersections, they haven't really delivered those big sulfide intersections that is the game changer for the company. And based on the work and the field work and the drilling and the sampling and the mapping that we've done over the last 2-3 years, we've come to conclusion that we're probably looking at something a lot deeper than something at surface. There's a lot of smoke, and what I mean by that, there's anomalies. There's a lot of anomalies everywhere, and that sometimes can actually be a little bit confusing. And so by doing this element ratioing work, where we actually don't look at the absolute values in the copper, but we ratio them against other elements, and not necessarily just copper itself, but there's a suite of elements that they use. You can actually then start seeing through the absolute values, and you actually can start picking up more finer details. And because we're looking at something deeper down, it's important to actually tie that information with actually the structure and the stratigraphy at depth. And that will then enable you to sort of position your drill holes more strategically, so that you get bang for your buck in terms of drilling. So it's a factor of actually looking at the copper scandium work, but also at the same time looking at the structure at depth. And in fact, and what I mean by the structure, you're looking for potential traps where you might have had fluids pooling and creating these large ore bodies, which the smoke that we're seeing on surface suggests is something there. But to date, we haven't really, we've got traces of it, we've got sniffs of it, but we haven't really got drilled through it. And so these, and coincidentally, these areas that we're looking to drill aren't, they're not in the same areas that we've been drilling in the past. They're actually next to them. There's an area to the northwest, for example, of Chiesa East, which it looks like a lithological as well as a copper scandium anomaly, which will be tested. But we've got our targets, we've got our locations. We'll finesse them once we've completed the airborne survey and done the interpretations on that. And hopefully, when we start drilling these deeper holes, we get the results that will please all shareholders. I think, moderator, you can go back to Nick.
Okay. Thanks, Vasily. So look, I think that brings to an end this call. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. We will endeavor to reply to any questions you have. But as I say, in summary, the supportive backdrop that we have with the very positive environment for commodities, particularly metals, particularly copper. I think all of us can be just so excited that we are sitting on a fantastic asset in a fantastic place in the world, with a lot of interest from external parties, with a drilling program that's about to kick off, and a potential development of a plant that will generate quite serious cash flows for us, potentially a year away, if all goes well, and supported by near-term inflow of further cash from M&A in terms of our asset in the DRC. So look, everybody, thank you for joining. Apologies again for the glitch at the beginning, but hopefully those of you who joined later got the introduction bit because I repeated it. And thank you for joining, and thank you for your ongoing support.